Hey, what's up, guys? Sleepy J here, pregame.com, joined by Uncle Dave Essler. Uncle Dave and I, we're going to go ahead. We're going to talk through three NFL football games for you. We'll try to come up with a couple picks here for you. Uncle Dave, NFL's on its way. I know you're excited watching all the college football games, but how excited are you for the first day of NFL come tomorrow?
I'm excited, but I have trepidations. I mean, this is probably one of the most difficult weeks. I think you don't really know who's who, and I feel quite confident. I've done a lot of work in the off season. I hit my only regular season bet on the under in Thursday night football, but I'm not going to go out on a limb and say that I'm going to win every game. I'm not that excited. I'm excited to watch it, but then again, I think probably by halftime I'll be berating the officials and the 3.5 minute reviews that you and I saw live. What needs to be overturned.
I felt like the lines were pretty sharp, Uncle Dave, for week one. And normally, we see some lines that we feel like we can kind of expose, but I think with like the game of the year lines, all the sports books coming out, across America now, that these lines are getting pounded into shape rather quickly. You feel the kind of the same way, like when you looked at the odds screen, it was like, wait, these all seem pretty close.
Yeah, they do. And I think what I would take away from that is they seem that way. But let's talk Sunday night. I mean, there's going to be some huge surprises. I mean, I go back to something I say every year when we're betting against the spread. Like if there's 16 games on a Sunday, um, if the underdog cashes, they generally win outright. And if the favorite wins, they generally cover the spread. And sometimes that's every game on Sunday, but there's usually not more than one, maybe two, on occasion where that's not the case.
You know what I was kind of finding myself doing here, Uncle Dave, is looking at a lot of teaser plays this week. And generally, when I feel like the lines are really tight, I'll tend to start looking at more teasers because I feel like there's at least I can get away from the line that I feel is correct. So and I don't feel like I'm making like a 50-50 type of decision with some of these games. I guess the first game, let's go ahead and jump into the Bengal game. They're going to be 6.5 point favorites here at home. Current total on this game right now is ticking up a little bit, 44 and a half. I want to tease the Bengals here, and it's not that I don't trust them. It's just that, well, if I can get a 6.5 or a 6 point teaser, get them down at home just to go ahead and win the game, I feel pretty comfortable with that. How do you feel overall with, kind of like the talk of, Super Bowl hangover type stuff? Because I don't believe that this applies to this team. When the Falcons did it, against your Patriots a while back, I felt like that was a veteran team that was scrapping for years. I mean, Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, these guys are dying to get to a Super Bowl, and that team was a relatively older team. I feel like it hurts a team like that, and I think that also, when we look at some of these football teams that they do go all in and they really they put all their eggs in one basket, and when they don't get there, take Tennessee for instance. AJ Brown's gone. Were the Titans all in last year? I don't know. But I think eventually you start losing pieces, and sometimes when you go to the Super Bowl and you lose, yeah, you're going to lose a piece here, lose a piece there. But for a veteran team, I feel like it really wears on them. I do not feel like that with this Bengals team. This team's very young, and I think that they're hungry to go ahead and get back there. So I'm not buying into the Super Bowl hangover stuff with this team in particular. Not sure how you feel about that, but I'm not a buyer of the Bengals being hung over from a Super Bowl loss. I think it motivates them.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you. I'm probably a little higher on the Bengals this year than a lot of people are. And to your point about the Super Bowl hangover, I don't know that Cincinnati expected to get there, so I'm not sure they have a hangover. But I don't think you can compare that to the Falcons, in that the Falcons are an older team. I mean, I think that's part of it. But I mean, the Falcons blew a 28-3 lead. I mean, that was the most colossal meltdown in the history of Super Bowls. And I think that perhaps more than the more veteran team had a whole lot to do with it. I mean, I mean, they were celebrating in the third quarter. So, but I agree with you. I'm not gonna downgrade Cincinnati as much as maybe some of the people that get paid to talk for a living might be going to do.
I actually upgraded them this year, Uncle Dave. I think that that there has to be a motivation factor, but there also has to be a confidence factor that Joe Burrow's a year older, Jamar Chase a year older, Higgins,
Exactly.
mixing. He found his footing. The offensive line is going to be improved this year, so I don't know how that team can't be more confident this year, than they were last year. It was like, hey, we made the promised land last year. We made the Super Bowl. That's great, but if they did it last year, why the hell can't they do it this year? So people are talking about downgrading that team. That's just it can only be based off of like the Super Bowl hangover, or that they were completely lucky. I don't think you're lucky there, Uncle Dave, to go on the road, especially in a place like Kansas City against a team like Tennessee that was on a bye. That's not luck. You played good enough football to go ahead and win those games to get to the Super Bowl. So I'm not buying any negative talk, with the Bengals whatsoever. I like that team. I think they're going to be a tough out this year. But let's talk about the Steelers. That team is going to start out. Big Ben moves on, Hall of Famer, no doubt. And Trubisky is going to be the starting quarterback. I'm sure you have concerns for Pittsburgh overall. My biggest concern, it is the quarterback position, and it's the offensive line. I think that that's a terrible offensive line. And the Bengals showed last year, especially in the playoffs, that was one of the things that really propelled them. That defensive line was pretty damn good. I think there's a mismatch here in the trenches, at least in that regard. But I do worry about Trubisky coming in here trying to maybe do too much, or maybe Pittsburgh kind of really plays vanilla and they just say maybe we can get the Bengals to go ahead and make some mistakes in this one. But I'm not a buyer of Pittsburgh going into Cincinnati winning this game, so I'm go back to going ahead teasing Cincinnati. I feel pretty good with that. But does Pittsburgh scare you at all?
Um, they always do because they have Mike Tomlin and a reasonable defense. So they always seem to come up with that game one way or the other that you don't see coming. They either win when they shouldn't or lose when they should. But I to your point about Roethlisberger, I mean, I don't want to sort of spit in the face of the Steelers fans, but how really good was he the last year? I mean, he had a year off. I mean, he had no arm left. I mean, you know, I don't say that Trubisky is any good, but is there as much separation between, about a 25% of Roethlisberger at his peak versus Trubisky? Maybe not. I don't, I don't, I'm not going to. I mean, maybe decision making, but execution wise, probably not. I mean, I, I think the same thing I thought going into last year. If the Steelers can run, and Najee Harris, I think, is one of the best. They might be able to beat people that maybe we don't expect them to beat. But that's going to be a little tough. And I had more respect for the Bengals defense last year than maybe the statistics show. I mean, they just seemed to come up with the plays when they needed to. But adding Clowney is going to be that is a big deal if he decides to play all 16 games. Um, I think Brad Delpit in his second season for the Bengals will be considerably better. So, I in as much as I would look that that's a fair bit of points. In as much as I would love to take them, I can't. But then I go back to division rivals know each other like really really well, and that's when shit happens, if you will. But talent wise, it's Cincinnati's game to lose, but I'm with you. I would probably tease the Bengals down, although my track record with teasing favorites down is not very good. You gotta wonder if that under isn't any good. But I mean, if it goes to 7, I could almost go the other way and tease Pittsburgh up, but I don't. I'm not laying 6.5. We talked the other day, and I have kind of flashbacks of Dan Marino when he went to the Super Bowl in his first year, maybe his second, I can't remember, but he kind of thought this was easy, and obviously it wasn't because they never went back again. The thing about Cincinnati though, Sleepy, I think that last year they kind of snuck up on people, and obviously this year they're not going to, and maybe people take them a little bit more seriously, and I know that's kind of where I fall. I still would have to do the sort of square thing and tease Cincinnati down. In fact, I did. I teased them a long time ago to Carolina when we probably thought Watson wasn't going to be playing, and now Carolina's favored. So I certainly have closing line value there, but I wouldn't recommend doing that anymore. But I'm with you. Teasing Cincinnati down is the probably safest, smartest thing to do if you're going to bet that game.
Yeah, I think that there's certainly a chance that Cincinnati could come out here and beat Pittsburgh up rather well, just because they want to get the sour taste out of their mouth, and I feel like maybe beating up on a division team like the Steelers, who have beaten them for years, could really just put a band-aid on all that Super Bowl hangover type stuff, and just get ready to rock and roll for the rest of the season. I went ahead. I teased the Bengals with the Saints. I think the Saints going into Atlanta is definitely a good option, for a teaser bet. So it would be Saints and Bengals for me. I don't really have anything else really on this on the Bengals and the Steelers game. Let's talk about your Patriots here, Uncle Dave, for a little bit.
Do we have to?
Yeah, I guess we have to. It was one of the games that we were going to talk about today. So, look, I think there have been some negative things that have come out throughout the offseason about the Patriots. And look, I think we can buy into some of it, but I think some of it has to be at least tempered a little bit because of Bill Belichick. He has a method to his madness, and you know that. So I'm only buying in 50% here, Uncle Dave. I'm not sure what percentage you're buying into. Kind of the negative reports that we've heard with New England over the entire summer. But now, how much are you buying into it? What you're hearing, and are there really any major concerns? Coming from you?
Well, yeah, of course there are. I mean, I think the thing is that I haven't heard anything positive. I think it. I think the negativity is probably a little bit overstated. But when I look at this game, I mean, everybody's talking about New England and Belichick and who's calling plays and yada yada yada, and nobody's talking about Miami. And I think that's a good thing for Miami. I mean, you know, the Dolphins put up, I think, 48 on the Eagles in their last exhibition game. And yeah, I know it was an exhibition game, but I don't think that can be overstated at all because it's 48 points, and that's an offense that really, really, really struggled. So I think it's Miami's game to lose. I mean, I'm not sold on Tua. I mean, I don't think anybody should be, unless maybe you're a Dolphins fan. But adding Tyreek, that that may end up being the best one-two punch of wide receivers in the league because, you know, not only do they have to worry about Tyreek, but they can't basically take Waddle out of the game, which is what a lot of them did last year. And they've got two running backs, in Edwards and Mostert, that probably both better than Miami's had in a decade, statistically anyway. And I think that offense is dangerous. I don't think Tua has to be really good. I think he just, I mean, what's the thing? Game manager. Now he's probably a little better than that. I think if he doesn't make mistakes and they don't put him in a position to make mistakes, I don't see New England winning. They typically don't play well in Miami, even in the 2 decades of Brady years. They lost many games in Miami that they were heavily favored in. I remember one they lost as double-digit favorites, and they only needed a win to get into the playoffs, or maybe a win to get the number one seed, and they didn't do it. So they don't have a good track record in Miami. So as you said, either Belichick, I think, is being as coy as ever, or New England's truly going to suck. And I think the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. But I think Miami's the better team. I think Miami has 2 decades of payback. Um, I know they got a first-year head coach, and there's a big discrepancy there, but I think the talent mismatch is probably bigger than the coaching mismatch. So I like Miami, Sleepy.
Yeah, I would be with you with Miami. I actually think that they're a really good bet here, Uncle Dave, in the second half. I think the Heat might actually catch up to the Patriots here for this particular game, and they're talking about that that they don't have offensive coordinators, and that they're relying on like Jacoby Myers and things like that. Parker's going to come in, and if he, like you said a while back, if he was really all that good, would Miami have gotten rid of him and especially sent him, in division? I feel like Miami probably, or at least I think the Patriots probably run out of some plays, come in the second half. I feel like if the Patriots are going to go ahead and make this a game, it's going to be in the first half where, a lot of the struggles that they supposedly had in the off season, um, they're gonna they're gonna rear their head in the second half, and I feel like the Patriots will probably run a bunch of scripted plays here, at least in the first half. I think Miami's going to be difficult this year. One of the things that we know is when people are really high on like a number of particular teams, one of those teams always shows out. It's not like they all just fail. It's and one of the things that, it seems like it's a wise guy type of thing is when everybody's high on somebody, you got to find ways to bash them. I don't want to bash Tyreek Hill, and I don't want to bash Jalen Waddle. And look, Tua was young last year in an offense that he was brand new to him. Do you hear people bashing Trevor Lawrence or bashing Joe Burrow? Like Burrow came out and he showed out. He really grew, and players grow. Josh Allen grew. Players end up growing eventually.
Josh Allen's a great example.
Right, and I think that this is one of those examples where a lot of people who are being negative and talking down on Tua, they could come to eat their words. Don't forget what this guy did. He brought Alabama back at one point and showed why people actually wanted him. I think Tyreek Hill makes the world of difference for this entire team. He opens up so much of this offense where teams just can't defend them. And that's one of the reasons why Patrick Mahomes had great success, because that dude he's going to draw double coverage. He's going to make the defense do certain things. And when you literally have to go ahead and try to stop him because he'll burn you, it leaves a lot of other options open on the table. And that's why I kind of like Waddle for this particular game to have a pretty damn good game. But I'm not down on Miami. I think that, there's a chance they could come out here and look really good. And then what does everybody do? If they beat New England, all that negative talk about Miami and Tua, especially if he looks half decent,
Yeah.
it all goes out the window and you never hear about it again. And all of a sudden, all those opinions, they get deleted and erased and thrown under the carpet. Uncle Dave, you know that.
I do.
Look, I'm not saying that Belichick can't go in there. He's the best coach that ever coached the sport in the NFL. But I do think that Miami stands a good chance to beat them. I feel like this is one of those years where Miami might actually get over and potentially, contend for, second place in this division. But
Yeah, you have to wonder if Buffalo wasn't in that division, if people would be high on Miami and high on Tua. They're kind of staying under the radar because of Buffalo.
that makes sense. Buffalo looked pretty damn good though the other night. I'll tell you that. Going on the road, beating the Rams up the way they did, that team looked pretty good. Josh Allen looked really good.
Yeah, I
I,
mean, and Josh Allen gets a pass on his development, and this is something I always bring up every year. And he played at Wyoming, and the leap to from Wyoming to the NFL is pretty wide.
yeah,
So he wasn't going to probably the speed of the game just enough in and of itself, and I don't think Tua is going to get that latitude, um, sort of criticism wise, because he came from Alabama, and you come from Alabama or most SEC schools that they have 50% NFL rosters. I don't think you're going to get the hall pass like Josh Allen did.
yeah, yeah. That makes sense. I agree with that. Let's go ahead and talk one more game here. Let's talk about the Giants and the Titans. Titans are going to be 5.5 point favorites here at home. Current total on this game, we're looking at 44 there, Uncle Dave. I don't like the Titans at all. I think that this team overachieved last year. I think that they played good football, maybe their best football that they had. But I feel like um, this is a team that just did too much. They did more than they probably even expected themselves. But I don't like what Tennessee's been doing. I mean, I don't think you can get rid of AJ Brown and not say that you kind of went all in last year. And I think it's going to slowly become a rebuilding phase with this team, Uncle Dave. I think they bring all these new wide receivers in. I don't think Tannehill's long for the job there. Um, I don't know if you agree with me there, Uncle Dave, but look, he's the reason why they lost that game last year to Cincinnati. Turn the ball
Yeah,
over 2 times. If things start going south, they're not going to point the finger at Derrick Henry. They're not going to point it at Vrabel. They can't point it at new wide receivers. They're going to point it at Ryan Tannehill. Eventually, you know, shit goes downstream, and he's going to be the guy that gets all the blame. And I worry that there's a chance that he's not even the starter come week 10, and they're saying, you know what, it's time to go ahead and start thinking about the future. And I wouldn't be shocked if Derrick Henry finds himself out, off that team, and this is a complete tear down and rebuild. That wouldn't surprise me at all. As far as the Giants getting 5.5 points going into this game, I think it's enough for me. I think they could win this game outright. I think there's a lot of optimism around this Giants team and a lot of unknowns. I think there's a ceiling for the Giants that a lot of people are probably not even really thinking about. Like, what have the Giants been for the last couple of years, Uncle Dave? They really haven't been all that great. They haven't been anything right home about. But I feel like Daniel Jones is at least a competent quarterback. Saquon Barkley is going to be healthy. They do have three receivers out there, and Tony Galladay and Shepard, um, that could probably go ahead and get the job done. So, look, I think the Giants are going to come in here thinking that Tennessee could be beat, and I think that's a real good mindset to have because, look, do you think the Jets are going into that game with Joe Flacco thinking they could beat the Ravens? Maybe they are, but I think the writing's on the wall with that game. But I think the Giants actually believe that they can steal a win here, and I can get a confident Giants team. I'm happy to take 5.5 points. If this was like three, I'd probably still take the Giants. If it were 2.5, I'd go, all right, it's not enough. But 5.5, that's enough for me to go ahead and back the Giants here on the road. So I'll go ahead and do that. Not very high in Tennessee. I would be surprised if they finished this season above 500. I'm really low on them.
Yeah, I would like to argue with you, but I can't. I would like to argue with you just because I like arguing, but you got. I think you got two teams headed in different directions. I don't know that they're both on the fast track in either direction, but the Giants have nowhere to go but up. And you look at Tennessee, a year and a half ago, they got nowhere to go but down. And all that Tannehill stuff in the off season, that might linger a little bit. I think. I mean, they say he's regained the trust of his team, but you know, there's also the heir apparent Malik Willis that, you're right. He may be in uh, by week 10. It might be before then. You know, I I like the Giants draft. I mean, Thibodeau and McFadden. I think they closed the gap. I mean, if there was a big gap between these teams, take away Derrick Henry last year, it was on defense. But I have to think that those new young guys. I mean, it's easier for a young defensive player to come in and make an impact than it is an offensive player. And like you mentioned, I think the Titans have just enough new pieces on the outside, and maybe not enough reps yet for Tannehill. So as much as it's really hard for me to bet on the Giants, or it has been historically, I'm inclined to think that this number might be a gift. And there was a lot of books. I think, and I know the Westgate and a few others. I mean, it's 5.5, but it was 6. So there's some people buying 6, and if you can get a 6, I would take it. There's a few still out there, but you're right. This could be a WTF wrong team favorite game.
Which would be shocking because you end up with the number one seed. And I think that that's where a lot of the love's coming from, Uncle Dave, is people don't think that this team can fall that far down. And we've seen it before, and we see it every year. There are teams in the NFL every year that make the playoffs that don't make it the next year. That's like a trend, and I think that's gone on for like the last like 40 years. And I think that this is one of the teams that this happens to. I think Tennessee struggles to make the playoffs. I think the Cardinals struggled to make the playoffs, and those were two teams last year that made it. And I wouldn't be shocked if neither of those teams make it. I think it's going to take Tennessee some time. To AJ Brown not being there is going to be a big deal for me. And I think Tannehill working with these new wide receivers could force him to throw a lot of throws, and he could end up getting picked off quite a bit here, and the Giants could steal one. So
Yeah, no disagreement from there. And to your point about Tennessee making the playoffs, the only thing I think that's in their favor, and we don't know how much better Jacksonville is going to be, is that division. I mean, it's basically, it's the Colts to lose, but they get the Texans and Jacksonville, both of whom should be better than they were last year, but they're certainly not elite. It's not an elite division, maybe like the NFC West might be, or a couple other ones, where every week is a tough game. They will have some gimmies, but that's the only way they get into the playoffs. Probably going 4-0 against those guys.
let me ask you this, Uncle Dave. I want to circle back to the Miami game. So we wrapped up with that. Uncle Dave and I we like the Giants and the points. We're gonna go ahead. We're gonna tease the Bengals. How surprised were you that the Dolphins line went from 3 to 3.5? Like that has to be super significant. That can't be public money, can it?
No, you know as well as I do, it's not. I mean, um, it actually went to 4 before it came back to 3.5 in a lot of places. So, yeah, that was real money. And how surprised am I? I guess from a betting slash market standpoint over the years, maybe a little. But since I know these two teams fairly well, or now I'm contradicting myself to what I have on the Patriots this year. Um, I'm not surprised, and I think it's a correct move.
I was shocked at all the lines. I thought the Philadelphia line was going to move. Out of every line in the NFL, I said this line is not moving off three. There is no way you're getting 2.5, and there's no way you're getting 3.5. I woke up the next day 3.5. Like, oh well.
Yeah,
Some
I think if I was smart, which some days I am and some days I'm not. When it was three, I might have taken the Miami money line. And when I could have got a four, I might have taken the Patriots plus four, um, just for a middle perhaps chance. I mean, that's a pretty significant. I'm not sure that's the right move, but mathematically it would have been. On the field. It may be very wrong, but I would admit to having missed a few early in this week that I probably should have been on top of, 6 weeks ago.
The only thing that worries me with that whole Miami line, Uncle Dave, is that it is 3.5. The fact that it went there, I feel like maybe they're just being way overreacted with this Miami team, and that could just be a simple mistake that a lot of people are making. I mean, the Patriots are still good, and that's the one worry is that how does this go from 3 to 3.5? All this Dolphins love. Maybe it is just an overreaction, and maybe it'll turn out the other way. Like I was saying, maybe we'll get slapped back into reality, and Bill Belichick could go out there and do what he does and remind us that we're not as smart as we think we are. But
Yeah,
it'll
I
be
don't, I don't, I don't know. I bet on the Dolphins. I took them at -3, and I'm not sure uh, which will be worse for me: losing money uh, and having the Patriots win. I mean, it's kind of an emotional hedge, I guess. But what will really suck is if the Dolphins win by two. You know,
yeah,
that'll be painful.
yeah, it will be. Well, hopefully tomorrow's not painful for either of us there, Uncle Dave. It's been a long month of preparation, but I think we'll be rewarded tomorrow with at least some good football. Hopefully, we do well. Hopefully, everybody that's been following us over the last couple years will go ahead and show their support once again, and hopefully, we'll be able to go ahead and give you guys some winners. You guys know where to get us at pregame.com. Uncle Dave and I were there all the time. There every day. We got our picks up for tomorrow, so run over there and go ahead and pick up our stuff for the NFL of week number one. But that'll wrap it up, guys. A couple games there for you, a couple picks. I'd like to wish you guys all the best of luck for NFL week number one. Enjoy the games.